So good morning. We're going to be talking about the IT audit today. And as Amy said, I work out of the Insight UK office, and I look after all the customers in the UK and Ireland, and other parts of Europe as well. And the IT audit is a question we get increasingly about how can Insight help us with the IT audit, what kind of things they're looking for, and how can we prevent some of the problems. So I'm having regular conversations these days, both with people in IT, senior IT people, IT directors, as well as consultants and business analysts who are concerned that what they're doing might fall foul of an IT audit. So let's go ahead and talk about it and show some things that we can do to help. So everyone's familiar with the financial audit. You get the auditors in for 2, 3, 4 weeks. They come in and analyse the transactions. They're adding up the numbers. Is your company or organisation correctly reporting its financial statements? Is it following generally accepted principles on how to do recording and publicising information? So the financial audit has been around forever, but it used to have a little bit of some IT mixed in as people realised the importance of IT. But the IT audit has now grown to such an extent it's often now a separate event. The IT audit can cover everything. It can cover not just how the systems were put in, but how resilient they are. It can cover how users access it, how you do things like upgrades, how you control what users can and can't see. How do you keep your data secure from the outside world? How do you keep your data secure internally? Not everybody should be authorized to see everything. So the IT audit has tremendous scope, and the auditors have to be very up to speed with new technologies and have a good understanding of both finance and systems together. So here's the real key to the system, and the real heart of the system is your ERP. So whether that's JDE Edwards or whether that's eBusiness Suite, your ERP system is providing the numbers that are used in the day-to-day running of the company, in the financial audit, and those numbers are coming from an ERP system that everyone implements with best intentions, but over time maybe it falls out of best practice, or people misuse it to save themselves time, or misuse it for more nefarious reasons. So if you cannot trust the data that's coming out of your ERP system, then there's tremendous implications to the organisation, and it's part of the IT audit to see how our systems are being controlled, managed, given access to, how are you creating a good environment to fulfil your organisation's needs from an IT point of view, while still giving your users what they need to do their jobs. So what we're trying to do is get the perfect balance of integrity. The numbers have to be absolutely accurate. They have to be reliable, trustworthy. You need to be able to prove where the data came from. So you see in terms like data lineage coming in. The system needs to be available. There's no point having the best system in the world if users can't get to it, if those numbers are inaccessible, or if it's not available when they need it, or if it's got no resilience. And confidentiality. Not everyone should be able to see all of the numbers. You might have a system that's being accessed by different departments, different countries, or even different continents, where the data is all in one place, but it shouldn't all be accessible to everybody. And all of that's got to be delivered in a really secure environment where everyone from top to bottom can trust the numbers and look after that sensitive company information. A company is only as good as the information it's got. If it loses the data to competitors or has data loss, then the implications are huge. So what we're going to talk about today is 5 key areas: unstructured business processes, standalone systems, data integrity, data security, and the whole area of systems development. So what we're going to do is start off looking at unstructured business processes. So you're coming along towards your IT audit, and you sometimes get the feeling that you're herding cats. You even just trying to find out what the user is currently doing can be a real challenge. And what do I mean by that? Well, many organizations have little idea what actual end users are doing with the systems that are provided. And that sounds quite shocking, but it's very true. I mean, sometimes the users will be given tools, they'll be given access to systems, but you know they're not using them. They're breaking the rules, they're not following processes, and whether that's a process, something like not following how to raise a purchase order correctly, down to, well, actually I'm using data at home on a memory stick, on an unsecured PC. So to find out what users are doing is actually quite problematic. And not being able to track them is a huge problem. So how do you regain control of data? Well, what we found at Insight Software is users want access to data to get their jobs done. And if they get frustrated, they will try and find a way around that. They'll try and find a way to get the data for themselves or access to systems themselves. So if you can give them access to the data they need in a reliable, fast, available fashion, they've got less incentive to actually take the data out. You won't lose control of your system. So that's something we're going to keep on coming back to during this webinar, is how to regain control of your data. There are a number of customers I've spoken to, I won't mention any names for obvious reasons, but when we actually have done an IT audit and looked at the results, you actually suddenly find out that actually there's multiple copies of the entire ERP system. IT may know about some of them, but often not. And that brings us to the second topic, standalone systems. These are in every single company that has an ERP system. This is where you've got clever Bob in finance, and he once went on a SQL course, so we book a book on how to write a Microsoft Access database. And they're copying vast amounts of data out into Access, into spreadsheets, and they're actually relying on that to run the organization. This has many implications. Obviously, you've got the lack of control of data. You've got the data being taken out using one user's profile, what their user ID, and maybe that data is being distributed far and wide. I'll touch more on that when we come to data security. But really the problem with spreadsheets, as they become larger and more complex, is the errors that they bring in. I was recently watching an article on CNBC. They're estimating in the UK spreadsheet errors alone are costing businesses up to £14 billion a year. That's quite a large number. And a couple of statistics from their research, 88% of all spreadsheets have errors in them, and 50% of those are serious defects. They are material defects. And this is costing companies money on their share price. It's costing people their jobs. It's leading to qualified IT audits. It's hard to get an unqualified audit if your company's just been in the press being fined by the information commissioner. So let's have a quick look at what we typically see around the area of spreadsheets. We find that people are using them all day long because the actual ERP system isn't giving them access to the data they want. And what we typically see is these kind of percentages. About 5 to 10% of the time taken is to do an export. That could be a SQL download. It could be a SQL download that has many thousands or tens of thousands. We've even seen hundreds of thousands of rows being dumped into spreadsheets. That's not good for the database. It's not good for the server. It certainly has implications for security and integrity, but we just look at the time taken. That's 5 to 10% of the time. Then roughly 85% of the time is spent tweaking the data, pivoting it, formatting it, putting in a hierarchy, doing a VLOOKUP, or trying to get data in, some descriptions maybe from a different table, and trying to get that all together. And if you're lucky, right at the end of the process, the person creating the spreadsheet will spend 5 to 10% of the time reviewing it to see, is it what I wanted? Is it good enough to answer the question that I was asked? So you've got the wrong ratios completely wrong at this point. You've got people in finance, business analysts, spending 85–90% of the time creating new data sources, and only 5 to 10% of the time analyzing them and adding value. We want to sort of reverse that formula and make it much more efficient for users to get live data out in a much more secure, efficient way with data integrity. So standalone systems, what can we do to reduce the need for spreadsheets? You know, if users can get access to the data they want, to the format they want, summarized on occasion, detailed on other occasions, with formatting, charts, graphs, there's a lot less incentive to actually need to take the data out to spreadsheets. Now, a lot of companies find that their users are very used to having spreadsheet access, and this means the users have probably got an SQL connection to the database, to the live ERP database. And they say that can't be taken away because it's the only way we can do our jobs. The obvious danger with an SQL connection or an ODBC connection is it read-only? Is it read-write? Can they go and update and corrupt the data in the ERP system? It's very simple to write a macro in Excel that could go and delete rows from the database or update rows. They might keep the saving time, but actually all you're doing is corrupting the data via a standalone system. So there's a definite move out there to reduce the reliance, the need, and the ability for users to create endless spreadsheets. So one of the problems with these standalone systems and with the IT audit in general, one of the other things IT audit is looking for is how good is data integrity? And the ERP companies are not great at this. There's a lot of emphasis at ERP companies around creating new features or new software, unless they're on actually going back and, say, fixing some of the older problems. Data integrity always creeps in. It's not helped by the fact that certain processes or software design allows users to enter bad data. It allows scenarios to crop up where data between different parts of your company does not reconcile, or master data is set up in an incomplete way. So we'll give you an example. If you're using JDE, for example, and you're using business units, those business units should all have category codes on there. How easy would it be to spot if any of those business units didn't have a category code set up at all, so it was blank? Or what if the category code that was set up was one that's now obsolete or was even being deleted from the system, yet your actual business units are still using those old obsolete codes? They're really hard to spot. But if you haven't got data integrity, then all of your efforts around the idea of data access and reporting will be undermined. So what can we do around data integrity? It's a massive area. It's one that Insight Software has spent a lot of time working on, is how to get that control back of your master data. So some things are fairly technical. They're looking at the primary keys to tables. So we've got tools that will help you do that. Other tools around the master data and some around the transactional data. And I'll just give you a quick example of a couple of those. So I'll give you an example from inventory. A very simple report that looks at the setup of inventory. In inventory in JDE, you've got something called a GL class code, and it's set up in 3 different places. These are 3 different database tables. It's almost impossible to manually check in JDE, are they set up correctly? So what we've done is create a very simple report that says, if any of these 3 files have a mismatch between them, list them on this report. We call it the GL class codes error check. So what I can see is I've got a report. It tells me which items at which distribution centers or branches have been set up incorrectly. And it also tells me who's responsible for fixing the data integrity of that item. So I can see some items here, they're not being owned by anybody. Other items down here, they're owned by Kathy McDougall. And if I roll down, I can actually see I've got 2 problems really. Items that aren't owned by anybody and what Kathy's doing. So it looks like I need a phone call to Kathy to try and fix those items and get the items without an owner to be looked at by someone, because data integrity is at the heart of the system. If I take an example from General Ledger, I might want to have a look at the situation. It's quite common where, for instance, I've got a batch header integrity problem. If I look in JD Edwards, it says all of your batches are posted, everything's good. But you can't reconcile your transactions to your balances. That's because in JD Edwards you can often get a batch header integrity problem, where the batch status on the header file is posted, but the actual transactions are unposted. So again, having this kind of access to live data lets you look at data integrity very quickly, and really what you want to do is find the root causes of the problem. You want to find out how users are doing it and stop them doing it. And if you can present those results to the IT auditors, it can say, we can identify problems, we can identify who caused the problems, this is the training we gave them, or the change to the process, or maybe we updated a piece of code to stop the problem happening again. That's the kind of thing that's completely going to satisfy the IT auditors that you're proactively managing things like data integrity. So for data integrity, we see the use of live data with the ability to drill down when you see any kind of a problem or error. It's fundamental to fix those data integrity problems. It's something you can't do in a spreadsheet. You can't have that drill down. You're not in live data. I mean, if we're looking at data integrity as well, one of the questions that you frequently might get asked in an IT audit is, when users are actually processing information, are they processing live information, or are they processing staged data, data from a data warehouse, for instance? What we actually find is people have a mixture of answers. You know, they say, well, actually, the data from finance, that's 1 day old. The data from sales, that's only updated once a month. And you're trying to reconcile those two different timelines of data. So having live access to data with drawdown completely changes how users use the data, the process in place. Again, that's how you just for the audit. So data security. This is a big topic. You've got two levels. You've got data security internally and externally. You've probably gone to a lot of effort to set up your ERP system to take full advantage of the security inside it. You've set up people with unique user IDs. You're controlling what information they can see, whether that's based on company or business unit or other information. You might be putting them into security groups to control their access to programs for segregation of duties. All of that goes out of the window as soon as they leave the ERP system, though. So what do I mean by that? Well, you know, I operate in Insight's UK office. If I was to download a list of customers and invoices into a spreadsheet, that would have been done using my user ID. If I then emailed that list to somebody in Australia or somebody in the US, they'd no longer be looking at anything connected with their own security. They'd be viewing data that's only accessible through my profile. And this is one of the biggest problems with these standalone data sources and insecure reporting, is you haven't got that control over who can see what data. Now, you do see sometimes people going to very labor-intensive ways of solving this problem. We've seen examples of customers who, before they had InsightUnlimited, they'd have to create hundreds of spreadsheets every month. They'd have to painstakingly create each spreadsheet so it only contained the right data, for instance, for a particular branch or a particular country or a particular manager. But now they've got InsightUnlimited, they can create one report, and when the user logs on to Insight, they log on with their user ID from the ERP system. So they either use their JDE user ID or their Oracle Business Suite user ID. And InsightUnlimited only shows you data you're authorized to. So one report can now be reused by many people in different departments, and you're safe in the knowledge that you're not giving them access to any data you're not authorized to. So if I went into Insight, for example, I wanted to have a look at, for instance, I've got my accounts payable top 10 suppliers report. This is only going to include data from companies and business units that I'm authorized to. In fact, if I type in the number of business units I'm not authorized to, it's just going to turn red. It's not going to give me access to any data. If I then went and actually have a look at, the names of 3 different business units I'm interested in, the system has turned that filter green because security has been passed. I'm authorized to those business units. They've been validated, and it will display the data for me. So having any kind of tool or spreadsheet or access database that doesn't adhere to your ERP security is going to be a red flag for the IT auditors, because you are breaking your governance and compliance around your corporate data. The other problem, of course, you have is that if you've exported data to Excel, it's very easy for someone to send it externally to the company. So by allowing access through ODBC, through SQL to the data for end users, you've no idea where that data is going to end up. So try and keep it in the ERP system using controllable, secure tools wherever possible. And there's many examples around where people have sent out emails external to the company, and as well as breaking security, they've accidentally left some confidential information in there. So we frequently hear of examples where information that shouldn't have gone out has escaped the building. You've had some data leakage. It's very expensive to put right. It can have confidence in a company. It can give a competitive disadvantage if that information becomes public. So the key message with data security is use the security you've already got. Use your ERP security to lock down and control what users can see. Don't give them the opportunity to break your ERP security. The fifth topic we're going to talk about is systems development. Now, this could be as simple as somebody writing a new report or a new screen, or it could be something major like a complete release upgrade. You know, in the JDE world, an Oracle, EBS, people are doing upgrades. They're doing data conversion. They're having to prove to the IT auditors that the system they had working perfectly in the past or before, does that system still work now? And this is a bit of a challenge. Well, when you've got reporting tools that only work on specific versions of ERP systems, it gets really hard to run the same report before data conversion and after. Or if you've got them tools that only work on certain environments in your ERP, then again it's hard to prove that the numbers are being consistent before and after the upgrade. So one of the things that InsightUnlimited does is it works on all versions of your ERP system. So for example, in JDE Edwards, you could have the same report for world software from the late 1980s that runs on 9.1, which is the latest release of Oracle. The same report will work on both environments. So I could run a report before the upgrade data conversion. I can see how many rows are returned. I can see what the totals are, the subtotals. And I can compare that then to the second the data conversion process is finished. I can run the same report again and compare the answers. Now, Insight allows you then to save those two result sets as a PDF, which is great documentation to show the IT auditors, to prove to them that even though maybe we've skipped several releases of the ERP system, we've gone from an older supported version up to the latest one, we can prove that the numbers were correct with the new system. Nothing's been lost, nothing's been gained, nothing's been unduly affected. The numbers are what we expected. So what you're trying to do is control the risk around upgrades. You can try to control the risk around getting caught out and delayed actually even in your upgrade cycle by someone realizing the data didn't get converted correctly, and we've got to actually go back to the old release, or we've got to delay going live. So one of the questions that I actually had today was just to get an inkling on if any of you are planning an upgrade in the near future. So on your screens, you will see a question just saying, when you're planning your JDE or e-business suite upgrade, is it in the next 1 to 6 months? Is it in the next 7 to 12, 1 to 2 years, or maybe you don't have an upgrade planned? But if you could all just vote now, that would be great. We'll just give another few seconds. Okay, we're getting a lot of activity around the 1 to 2 years. Okay, so the majority of the people who replied actually said it was in the 1 to 2 years from now. So this is something that if you want to speak to us later on, we've actually got case studies around how to use Insight to prove to the IT auditors that your JDE Edwards upgrade has gone successfully and data's been converted okay. So the systems development, it's around how do you control new reports, new upgrades, the tools you're giving to people. Now, one of the things we find at Insight is because end users and business analysts can now actually build reports because they don't need to be a programmer with InsightUnlimited, because they don't need SQL skills. You're actually getting people who actually, say, for instance, understand finance. You're getting accountants who understand what they need, having access to the data. They're not having to try and explain to a programmer what a balance sheet is, or why you wouldn't carry through the opening balance for a P&L account versus a balance sheet account. So you've got people in operations, in finance, in the business, who now don't need technical skills to create the reports they need. So systems development becomes a lot quicker. You've still got complete control with security, but you're taking out a link of human error in people not understanding specs as well. So those are the 5 steps we've looked at for around the IT webinar. So the tools we give you to help control that as part of the InsightUnlimited suite is InsightUnlimited reporting, live data access to 30 JDE Edwards modules and your custom tables. You don't need to be a programmer, don't need to have SQL skills. The data is always done live, and it fully uses your JDE Edwards and e-business suite security. So users can only see what they're authorized to. It's a tool to keep the auditors happy. Insight Reconciler is designed to help with data integrity. Do my inventory transactions in the Cardex, do they match the general ledger? Do I have a problem with goods received not vouchers? Insight Reconciler will help you solve those problems, and again be able to prove to the IT auditors that you don't have reconciliation errors, that if a new problem does come up, that you can find very easily what happened, when it happened, and who did it. And then you can obviously note down for them what you did to fix it, and fix the root problem so that it doesn't come back again. As with all things in an audit, having the proof and the evidence, the documentation, that you know what happened and how you fixed it is key to getting a quick tick in the box from the auditors. InsightUnlimited Budgeting is the world's only budgeting system fully integrated with JDE Edwards. Now, what does that do for you? Well, it certainly means you can prove you're now budgeting away from spreadsheets. You're budgeting with security around data access and data control and data integrity. And you're not just relying on people creating macros and spreadsheet formulas willy-nilly in a spreadsheet. Well, the last part is InsightUnlimited Quick Start. This is what gives you out-of-the-box access to 30 different JDE Edwards modules, hundreds of pre-built templates, all of which have been tested. You can't create a bad piece of SQL. You can't create an inaccurate report. It's all been created for the users, so they don't have to worry about having to build things themselves. Again, it's a very auditable, controlled way to give access to data without having to give users access to the live database themselves directly through something like ODBC or SQL. So InsightUnlimited, it's fast, it's real-time, very intuitive. These are the golden rules we live by, so all of our software has to follow those. And if you'd like to see InsightUnlimited running on your own data, please just give us a call. We'd be more than delighted to set up a web meeting. We can install Insight, we can attach it to your live ERP system, and we can show you exactly what we've been talking about today, live access to data with drill down. And I've just got my contact details on the screen there. So Amy, do we have any questions?
Yes, one that's come in, John. Does InsightUnlimited work over all versions of JDE Edwards?
Well, everything from, I think, the late 80s, so versions of A6 on World software, all the way up to the latest versions of World, and every version of Enterprise One from the original B7.3 through XE 8.12, 9 and 9.1 now. And it also works for our Oracle Business Suite, so if you've got Oracle Business Suite 11i or R12, it will work on both versions there.
Okay, great. And I think that's probably us out of time actually, John. But if you do have any questions, you do have John's contact details up on the screen now, so do please feel free to jot those down. So thank you very much everyone for taking the time to on the webinar today, and of course thank you to our presenter, John. So thank you very much everyone. I hope to speak to you again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.